Anger. Anger is a big deal for a lot of people, and that can be your power, and it can be your destroyer in life.
Ooh, keep going, babe. This is good.
So you can say this is evil, this is Lucifer, this is Satan, this is animal, this is primal, this is something that's a detriment to my spiritual growth. Or you could say this is for me the springboard into the embodiment of who I am on a higher level. If I can step into this, then I can draw things, just the stars from the heavens, into a dimensional reality that might be a little bit denser. So shadow works, psycho spiritual, meaning like spiritual being more like up, shadow being a little bit more down, but both have potential energy in them. So it's about like bringing something from heaven to earth and bringing something from the underworld onto the heaven plane. Okay, so shadow work would be something bringing up from the unconscious something into consciousness, whereas spiritual would be something that's much more transcendent and ascended and connecting with that. So for me, this is a movement that's both above as below, right? So this is important that you have an integration from in both domains to be a really
Wow.
fully functioning human being. So like a Star of David, for example, you have a pyramid like this and you have a pyramid like that. You need both to be fully embodied, to be here, to be saying like I have a human experience, but I'm also divine.
Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I am your host, Chris Doris. And a couple housekeeping items before we get to our guest for this episode. Number one is if you're not getting notifications of these new episodes of Tough Talks, and if you're not getting my blog posts every single Tuesday, and if you're not getting my daily dose mental toughness tips in 30 seconds or less delivered to your email inbox every morning at around 6 a.m. your local time, wherever you are in the world, then let's fix that. And that can be remedied very easily by going to ChristopherDoris.com/lists, Lists, ChristopherDoris.com/lists. Put your name, email, click, bam, problem solved. The second housekeeping item is if you're digging these episodes of Tough Talks, then please do me the glorious favor of sharing them. Forward them on. Invite your loved ones who may also appreciate these conversations. Share it with them. Let's spread the love. Our guest today is named Dr. Daniel Harner. He is a doctor. He has a PhD in psychology. He's got a lot of degrees in psychology. He's from Austria. He lives in Sedona, Arizona right now, which is about 2.5 hours due that way, which is north. And I just met him. In fact, I haven't met him. I've been introduced to him. We had a couple conversations, but I don't know him very well. I was introduced to him by someone if you've heard many of these interviews and you've heard about these guys, but this is the guy that introduced us. This is Steve Hardison. This is my other former coach, Steve Chandler, and I love this picture. I love these guys. So this guy, Steve Hardison, is coaching Daniel now, and he introduced us about a couple weeks ago. And I don't know a whole lot about Daniel other than, I'm going to learn a lot about him today. He is a former psychotherapist. Now he refers to himself as a psycho-spiritual mentor. And I just can't wait to hear what that means because I don't know what that means. So he's made a transition from being a traditional psychotherapist and now has moved on into a new realm. And we're going to explore that and see what this guy's up to. So I'm excited to share this guy with you. Let's go find him. He's waiting for us. Dr. Daniel Harner, where you at, man? There he is, the man, Dr. Daniel Harner. What's up, Daniel?
Hi, Chris. It's great to be with you. It's an honor.
Oh, right on, man. I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to share you with the Tough Talks tribe. Now here's the deal. I kind of referenced this in the intro. I don't know a whole lot about you, and I like that because I trust that I'm going to get to know you much better through this conversation. I trust that we're going to get to know each other much better as time goes on. But right now, this is going to be a cool way for me to really meet you. I met you through Steve Hardison, who is the most gracious decliner ever of invitations to be a guest on Tough Talks. I know he's going to say no when I ask, but I just love hearing the way he says no. So Lee Metzer, he is your coach. He's one of your mentors. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to getting, oh, by the way, for people that are listening, if you don't know who Steve Hardison is, he's a former coach of mine, current coach of Daniel's, and he is the ultimate coach, and he's a powerhouse who transforms lives. He's going to be affecting you guys through us in this interview today.
That's right.
I have several questions that I wanted to ask you, but I'd like Daniel to open up with a very intentionally vague, tremendously open-ended question, okay, that you can answer, go wherever you want with. All right, here it is. What's your deal?
My deal is I'm here to be a vessel of truth, beauty, and love.
Wow. Okay. Didn't require a whole lot of thought. To be a vessel of truth, beauty, and love. And that's very consistent with the language that you use on your website.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you have a PhD in is it clinical? It's in psychology.
Yeah, I have 4 degrees in psychology. I went to school for 10 years to study the human mind and the human soul.
And you went to school where did you get your PhD?
Well, I was born in Austria, and that's where I got my bachelor's and my master's. And then I came to the United States when I was 24 in 2006 to study with David Hawkins, who was a psychiatrist that really inspired me on the journey, what I call psycho-spiritual, because he was able to combine the spiritual with the psychology. So that's where I got part of my informal training. And then later I went on to get a PhD in clinical psychology at the California Institute for Human Science, where I studied with Dr. William Tiller, who's a Stanford engineer and pioneer in the field of psychoenergetic science. Again, about how does the human mind, how does human emotion actually affect the physical functioning of humans. And
you have studied with some serious badasses.
Yeah, I've been very privileged. And some of this I didn't know before I came to America, how many mentors I will meet along on this journey. I mean, the only reason for me to come here to the United States was to be exposed to ideas that I wasn't having access to in Austria. So I came here to be really immersed into the study of human transformation. Mm-hmm.
Roger that. Before we get into, I really am looking forward to hearing from you about what does psycho-spiritual transformation or psycho-spiritual mentoring mean, and why the transition from traditional psychotherapy to that. But just before we get to that, you live in Sedona now. Why? Why there?
It's a very simple answer. That's where David Hawkins used to teach. So I saw him for the first time. For me, it was a sealed deal. I wanted to move here and just be immersed in everything that he did. So his study groups, his books, his lectures, and he taught here until 2012, and that's when he died. And but I still stayed in Sedona because it's a place for me where I find it's very supportive of my spiritual and inner work. So for me, I feel like this is a great base for me to do the work that I do, and I'm also connected with people that are like-minded, and I find it to be just a beautiful place to just reside.
I love Sedona so much. Spent a lot of time in Sedona. So take a second to let people know what you do these days.
Yeah, I started out becoming really passionate about psychology when I was 17, when I read Jung's autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. So after that, I felt like, okay, I found my mentor in a way, it's like kind of like a grandfather. So I thought like, this guy has figured out how to combine the science of the soul with the mythology and with the spirituality. So I felt like this guy had a greater picture of what the human functioning is, rather than just talking about behavior or neurochemistry or traditional psychiatry. So that's what got me started. And then I also, my own suffering and my own wounds and my own injuries on the inside really motivated me to really dig deep into wanting to find out what the hell is the human experience, and really wanting to understand what's going on with the people around me and what's going on with my own inner suffering that I wanted to find a solution for. So I went into psychology to do that. But the longer I learned psychology, the more I found it was not giving me what I wanted. So I learned in parallel from other mentors, and they were all pioneers in the psycho-spiritual realm, and I'm happy to tell you more about those mentors later. So since I didn't find a real solution to my own questions, existential questions from psychology, at some point I transitioned out of that and incorporated more of what I call a psycho-spiritual transformational framework of working with people, because that's what also seemed to make the biggest difference in my own journey. So as I was studying, I was just gradually reinventing myself, and I was also reinventing the way I was working with the people around me. So at this point, I wouldn't call myself a psychologist or a psychotherapist or even a coach, because I'm just doing me at this point. And what me is just the sum total of my whole experience.
Well, that's interesting. Not even a coach. So you, okay. So when you meet somebody for the first time, right? And say you're at like a holiday party or something. Oh, very nice to meet you, Daniel. So what do you do? How do you?
Yeah, I know. It's the hardest question to ask, right? It's just like, it's like, okay, what do I do?
I wish I could just listen. I would just be standing over in the corner. Oh, good. I want to hear what he said.
Yeah, right. It's like I'm in the beginning. I said I'm a vessel for truth, beauty, and love. So that's who.
Would that be how you would answer to a stranger at a cocktail party?
Not necessarily, but I would also tell them that I'm a bridge between science and art, and that I'm a bridge between mind, body, and spirit, and that the work I do is bringing all those things together, both as a scientist and also as a practitioner. I wouldn't blow people's minds like that just as an initial intro, but yes,
I bet that response would be much less likely to incite surprise or invoke surprise in Sedona than would be down here in the Phoenix area.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
For sure. No, I mean, I'm a human development consultant or a psycho-spiritual mentor or
let's go with that. I love that, because that's a cool. That caught my attention when I read that. Where I read it at a few places. I read it on your Facebook. I read it on your LinkedIn. No, actually, I don't think it is on your LinkedIn, but it's definitely obviously all over your website. So, psycho-spiritual mentor. So let's unpack this a little bit, because I think that the distinction might be one of the big takeaways for people who are watching and are listening to this. Like, so you said there were the world of psychology wasn't giving you everything you wanted.
Right.
Then as you continued to elaborate on that, you mentioned that it didn't answer some of your more existential questions.
Right.
Okay. So maybe that's part of the answer, that it didn't answer your existential questions, but like, what else? What was missing? What was psychology failing to do for you that inspired you to even shift on?
Right. Well, first of all, psychology as it was initially drafted isn't the problem, because psychology in the beginning really meant the science of the human soul. So that's pretty broad.
I've actually never heard that. That's fascinating, because I have a master's degree in counseling psychology as well.
Yeah, I know.
And you do, and I've never heard that, and I love that. I wish I had heard that.
Yeah, I mean, the human soul, as far as I'm concerned, is like a conglomerate of like, is a much bigger space than just human behavior, which psychology now defines itself as the science of human behavior. So like, that's a little bit limited, so that's like, I couldn't really fit myself into that box. Okay. So the science of the human soul, so that I could fit myself into that box. But again, soul is also for me the word psycho and psycho-spiritual mentorship. So that would be also a limiting factor too. So psycho-spiritual would include even bigger fields. So you can see it like Russian nesting dolls, right?
Yeah.
You have an expression of three-dimensional space with human behavior. You have an energetic like reality that surrounds that, like an acupuncture system or a chakra system, whatever you want to call that. And then you have like an emotional system and a mental system and a spiritual system. So we have different fields that we're embedded in. So when I say that the box was too small for me, I had to branch out, is because I wanted to encompass all levels of reality where healing can occur. So why not work on all levels simultaneously? Why not harness the whole human potential? Why box it's well limited to a certain definition of a framework?
So what's the difference between these two terms then? Spiritual mentor versus psycho-spiritual mentor.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and the distinction is extremely important, because there's a lot of spiritual people that might end up being in a sort of expanded state of awareness. But for you to be calling yourself psycho-spiritual, you would have to include a psychic layer, which includes the shadow work. So
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Which includes the what work?
the shadow work.
Shadow, the Jungian shadow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. You can be spiritual without having done your shadow work.
Can you define for people that don't understand what you mean by that term shadow?
Yeah, shadow means that everything that is not that you're supposed to know that you're not aware of.
Oh, wow. That is such a cool definition. You know, I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung, and I've never heard that before. Carl Jung's the man to me.
Yes,
He's the badass of all psychology and psychiatry. He was actually a psychiatrist,
that's
right?
right.
But those are different worlds now.
Yes,
But he was badass. He was the coolest of them all, by far the coolest ever.
yes.
And can you say that again? That's a killer definition. That is easily the coolest definition I've ever heard of the shadow.
My commitment to you is that my commitment to everybody, to the world, is that I'm expressing myself as simple, that a teenager or a 5-year-old can understand it.
I couldn't love that more. You know, just as an aside, since you brought it up, my favorite combo platter in the world is simple, profound.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so
I think
you're doing that. So give it to me again. The definition of the shadow.
Yeah, shadow is like a part of you that's meant to be known. It's meant to be conscious inside of you, but you're not aware of it yet. You haven't really let the thing that's underwater come to the surface. So really everything you're supposed to know and you're not aware of. So
the shadow, everything that's a cool definition, because all right, so the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, are you into Star Wars at all? Do you ever get into the metaphors from Star Wars?
Not much, but I'll keep up with you.
Well, we don't need to go there, but the dark side, the shadow, is darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like the dark side. And a lot of people hear that, and it's and they there's a connotation of evil or extreme pathology.
Yes.
But that's when you give that definition, it's just the stuff you're supposed to know that you don't know yet. It's like,
I mean, okay. The way you probably heard that saying, the way you look at things determines what you're seeing. So you can look at the shadow as this, and you can look at the shadow as that. Okay. So, and depending on how you look at it, depending on how you're choosing to look at it, it will change its face. It's not a thing in itself.
So can you give us an example of so you're working with somebody and you're doing some shadow work. What is a simple example of something that we were supposed to know, but that we'll just make I am your client, right? Yeah. And what's something that I'm supposed to know what's an example of something that I might not know yet?
Well, I mean, for you seem to be very comfortable with certain aspects of you. So you don't strike me as somebody who's very neurotic. Okay. So
I'll give it time, babe. Give it.
But I'm
hang out with me on Sunday when the Eagles lose a freaking football game. Neurotic is the only word that you'll have to describe me.
So, but I'll give you an example. Is anger. Anger is a big deal for a lot of people. And that can be your power, and it can be your destroyer in life.
Ooh. Keep going, babe. This is good.
So you can say this is evil, this is Lucifer, this is Satan, this is animal, this is primal, this is something that's a detriment to my spiritual growth. Or you could say this is, for me, the springboard into the embodiment of who I am on a higher level. If I can step into this, then I can draw things, the stars from the heavens, into a dimensional reality that might be a little bit denser. So shadow work, psycho-spiritual, spiritual being more up, shadow being a little bit more down, but both have potential energy in them. So it's about like bringing something from heaven to earth and bringing something from the underworld onto the heaven plane. Okay, so shadow work would be something bringing up from the unconscious something into consciousness, whereas spiritual would be something that's much more transcended and ascended and connecting with that. So for me, this is a movement that's both above as below, right? So this is important that you have an integration from in both domains to be a really
Wow.
fully functioning human being. So like a Star of David, for example, you have a pyramid like this, and you have a pyramid like that. You need both to be fully embodied, to be here, to be saying like I have a human experience, but I'm also divine.
Have you ever studied any Joseph Campbell?
Some, yeah.
Because he's on the symbolism, and he's also a big Carl Jung fan. So,
Yeah.
who are the people that seek you out?
Well, it depends, but they're mostly people who have a deep spiritual longing in their soul and who want to make it the most important part of their life.
Wait,
So
that want to make what the most important part of their life?
they're in an unfolding, like their journey, their returning home, their fulfillment. So that is the single characteristic that that all of my clients have. So there has to be an urgency inside. Not just a curiosity, but an urgency. An urgency means like, I have cancer and I want to survive. So you have to be homesick to a degree to be longing for the waters of the divine to such an extent that you're willing to give up everything that stands in the way to reunite with where you come from. So that's
these are incredible phrases and sentences that you're dropping here. You have to be a little homesick to long for the waters of the divine. Is that what you said?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing myself say those things for the first time too. It's not that I practice this. So.
Well, okay, so someone who's homesick for the waters of the divine, or they're having a spiritual deprivation crisis, is a term.
Yeah.
You can use that. What's a sort of a best case scenario after someone works with you? What's different when you guys are done for them?
Well, the only thing that has to change is everything.
Well, that's not a very big deal.
So, well, you change the way of being. So you change the way of being, and everything in your life will reorganize to who you are. So you have to be willing to turn your world upside down. So you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to embrace a different point of view. You have to be willing to fall apart so you can be put together again, and that's more in alignment and accordance with a bigger picture. So that's when suffering ends. Suffering is just a limited box you're in. Once you expand outside of that box, you'll actually see the world as it is, rather than seeing it how you want it to be. So it's almost like you're just stepping into a bigger field, and from a bigger field, you will then see life differently and have a different result. So people will experience better health, there are better relationships, but what matters most is like how they feel on the inside. So you'll feel like you're just more connected, you're more plugged in, you're more creative, you just have more energy. So, and that urgency and that feeling like I'm so separate and I'm hurting from this sense of separation inside of me, from experiencing this distance between me and other human beings, or the distance of who I am and what I want, that kind of just gradually crumbles and falls away.
As I listen to you, I mean, I'm hearing like, I'm hearing, or what's coming to mind are terms like, the awakening process, enlightenment. How do you feel about that terminology?
I don't agree or disagree. I think it all depends how we use it, So I think what's lacking here is a discernment and a diversification of those terms, because the reason why I started with David Hawkins was because he said there is no such thing as one state of enlightenment. He says there's several different layers to that term of enlightenment, meaning like it's like a gradual staircase to God. It's not just one rung. There's several rungs on that ladder to enlightenment. So when people talk about awakening, they often just mean that you have an expanded state of awareness, but that can mean anything. It can mean like on a scale from 0 to 1,000, it could be 600 or 700 or 800 or 900. There's different levels of integration and of spiritual fulfillment that you can experience. So depending on, that's why I mean, this discernment is lacking with these terms, because what are we talking about, So it's different. There's different shades of the color red. Are we talking about red? What is red? Like what kind of red? It's like, it's not the same thing. We have to become more literate to dimensions that aren't visible as we are doing this human journey.
Is suffering necessary?
As long as you need it. And when you don't need it, you don't need to.
All right, let's break that down a little bit. Because like my preference is to not suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think suffering is a whole lot of fun. So my preference is to not do that.
Mm.
So, but that response implies that there's that value serves a function.
Right.
And then when that function has been served is no longer necessary. What is
Right,
is that,
right.
do you agree with that or not agree with that? I don't even know if I agree with you. I'm just listening to you.
No, I mean, that's how I meant it. I think suffering is,
function?
first of all, function, I think it's a stage in a process. So like when a chicken comes out of a shell, you need to break the shell, a little chick. So, yeah. And when the shell breaks, you might experience that as a discomfort. And at some point, you may not know that the discomfort is part of the breaking free. And while you are in this unaware stage, you might experience it as suffering or as meaningless. And the growing into a spiritual adult means that you are understanding that this is a stage in the process that's necessary, and the suffering then gradually ends because you understand the meaning behind it. So suffering serves a purpose because it pushes you into a greater level of adulthood and spirituality. And once the light goes on, you'll say, you know what, the suffering doesn't need to be there. I don't need it anymore. I like people who suffer, Chris, because I feel like they have an urgency. And I think the reason why people suffer is the only reason why I have clients. And the reason and the way I help them is to just have less of that.
Suffering is good for business.
That's right. I have a pretty tough head.
That's go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I have a tough head, and I'm a pretty tough cookie. I'm very resistant as a personality. So without me having a certain degree of suffering, I would never come to America. I would never be who I am right now. I needed to have a push all the time for me to get going. So I look
forward to the day when you don't have such great job security.
Right.
So when is that going to happen ever? Like, do you think, where are we going? Now I'm going into big picture because I love that I get to have this kind of conversation with you, which I did not anticipate. I didn't know where this was going to go, but I'm loving this because these are some of the big questions that I have all the time. I started a file when I was in college. And it's in this house somewhere, but I cannot find it now. And the file was like why humans are evolving in a productive, healthy, spiritual way. And I would collect articles and whatnot, data that would support that. So my hypothesis is, and I can't not believe this, is that we're growing, that humans are growing, that we're evolving forward.
Right.
But that's not a popular belief with a lot of people. Most people are focused on problems. Let me finish that. When I share that, like we're moving in a good direction, people go, bullshit. And then they'll go on a rant of all the fucked up shit that goes on. That's true.
Sure.
All right. But now what's your opinion on that? Like, how are we doing as humans historically? And looking at the way we've evolved and where you think maybe we're going, how are we doing? Are we doing all right?
Well, first of all, I believe that nothing is as it seems.
That's going to make it hard to answer then, isn't it?
Right. Well, first of all, the appearance is one thing. Reality is another thing. So nothing is as it seems. So, but we have to make that distance between appearance and reality less wide. Okay. So we're going to bring this closer together. So we are seeing behind the veil more and more and more. So we see actually what's going on. What you're referring to is you're saying we're doing great. And I choose to see that the same way you do, whether I'm factually accurate or not, but it's just it works for me better to see it that way. So I have pragmatic self-reinforcement from that belief, because I feel like, yeah, I'm just doing better if I think we're doing great. It doesn't mean that I'm agreeing with everything that's going on, and it doesn't mean that I'm a Pollyanna and I have my head in the clouds. You know, I still know that the devil is walking with us. You know.
Mm, mm. Oh, so that's an interesting sentence. How do you use that terminology? The devil. Okay, let's unpack that sentence. The devil is still walking with us. What does that mean?
Yeah, I believe that there's something like an adversary in life, like a shadow that we talked about earlier.
Mm.
And it's not good or bad. It's just here to test you.
That's huge, man. That it's not good or bad. It's just here to test. You're really taking a lot of pathology out of the human experience, aren't you?
Well, yeah, for sure, because otherwise we can't grow.
That seems very contrary to a lot of the experience that I had engaging and interacting with psychiatrists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a misunderstanding, you know, that's all. If you see it from a small box, then everything that's outside of that box will seem like chaos, disorder, and pathology. When you step out of that box, you can see it as potential energy. And the Jungian psychology was a psychology of the unconscious. Jung went into the psychology of alchemy, and he said there's two parallel streams of human evolution, one being more the Christian savior story of the light, and becoming like the Christian Western worldview. And whereas the other parallel stream would be the alchemy and the psychology of the unconscious, where it's more about what's the underwater, what's the underbelly of that light consciousness, and that's the shadow in a way. And our job is to extract the gold from the pile of dirt.
That's alchemy, right? That's what alchemy
It's
is.
alchemy, it's transformation, yes. And that's why there's no pathology in that. It's just like, you better learn how to extract potential energy from something called negative, because otherwise you're missing out on a huge part of the human potential.
Well, put in that perspective, everything sounds cool, Ed. I should have worn "The problem is the gift." That's the shirt I should have worn today.
Right?
The problem is, right? The problem is the gift.
It's true. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. The devil is walking with us is more like saying, learn how to be with the shadow. Learn how to let's not be like spiritual bypassers that say everything's beautiful and wonderful. Say, yeah, life is beautiful and wonderful, and yes, I am preparing for war.
Can you talk about spirit? I love the way you talk, man. This is fun. What's spiritual bypassing?
Well, spiritual bypassing is very akin to what early psychoanalysis used to refer to as defense mechanisms of the human ego. Everything that's like an internal conflict would be warded off by some form of rationalization, projection, or reaction formation, or any of those. So now, since we're in this time where spirituality becomes really important and like more like a popular mainstream agenda, it's like you could add that now to that book. It's like you can use spirituality in order to make yourself feel better, meaning like you have a lot of shit laying around in your system and you're just putting a lot of flowers on top that sound nice. You're playing harp and you're making this beautiful music and it's all great, but underneath you haven't done your shadow work yet.
Okay, so that's what it is. You're using the appearance of spirituality to bypass the shadow work.
Yes, exactly. You just make it's like a feel-good psychology that doesn't.
That's bullshit. So it's bullshit.
Right.
No bullshit.
Totally.
What do we need as humanity? What do you think right now humanity needs the most? Right now, the end of 2020.
I mean, it's a combination of masculine and feminine consciousness. So and a real strong, when I talk with masculine consciousness, I mean like a real strong willingness to be present, like straight and narrow presence, like looking through appearance and being with what is, like not wavering, like being like a rock. Like you have to learn how to be with discomfort within yourself. You have to be able to sit through difficult things without projecting those things onto other people or politicians or anything. You have to be with yourself and just say, I'm going to be with this, whoever I am, with my human experience, and I'm taking full responsibility for that.
What is a nice, simple practice? Or maybe not nice. Delete the word nice because maybe it's not nice. What's a simple practice that you would advise or that you could share with us on a practice on how to actually increase your ability to be or strengthen your ability to be present?
But first of all, you have to want to do it. So
Let's
because
assume that everybody on Tough Talks is listening or watching Tough Talks because they totally want to. Let's assume that.
yeah.
So now,
Well,
okay, so
then whatever you do will work. So all you have to do is like, I want to do this. So the rest is like, okay, are you gonna go for a walk, or are you gonna do some like exercise, or you're gonna do some meditation? I mean, there's 1,000 ways to roam. What works for me personally is just a real rigorous self-honesty that I'm practicing every day to be with myself, just being present and still and being willing to absorb whatever arises with me in the moment. And you can do that throughout your day. You don't even have to take time apart from the day to meditate, which you can do and which I do. But what I want to do is just to make my lifestyle and my way of being like kind of like a water I'm swimming in throughout the rest of my day. So I don't have to really make a distinction between work or free time or meditation time versus other time. I want to have like a contextual shift in my life that just makes this into a way of life. So, and that requires discipline. It requires a lot of discipline to not go sideways all the time. You have to have your heart open. You have to have your mind switched on, and you have to be in your body. So it's like those three things are very important, and I focus on those things all the time.
So when you started to answer that question with, well, first of all, you have to want it. You have to want to be more present.
Like really bad.
Okay. All right. Now let's go the other way. Let's go the opposite direction. Let's assume that people who are watching and are listening to this don't. It's not that they don't want to be present. It's not they're saying, no, I'm good. I prefer to not be present. They may not even know what that means, so they don't have that hunger. Right. So what is it?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like where you say you have to want it? Like you gotta want what?
Well, for example, like imagine you haven't eaten for 30 days and you want a meal. Imagine you haven't taken a breath and you really need to want to take the next breath for your survival. Your spiritual nourishment has to become that important for your life to change to that degree that I'm talking about.
Spiritual nourishment.
You have to really long for it. Without that like real longing for it, you will never prioritize. Like prioritizing, you have to have discomfort, but to prioritize in a certain way. Like you have to be really lonely.
Do you have to have that discomfort in order to really want the spiritual nourishment?
I think those are the beginning stages. Yeah. So it's like from bad to good to great, right? So from hurting to doing better and then falling in love with it and then gradually moving to greater states of joy, for sure. But you have to be the human existence is existence of kind of separation in the beginning, and there's a feeling of being separate, and everybody has a want to go home. So you want to gradually just release that. So and that you're going to feel better and better and better the longer you do the work.
Do you know who Gary Mahler is?
Yes.
Have you met him?
Yes.
Oh, you have?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. How great. Because you just reminded me of him. I love that dude. He's a former Tough Talks guest also.
Yeah.
And as you know, kind of.
I've seen him. Yeah. I've seen him with you. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Hmm?
So he mentioned, he says, everywhere I am, I'm at home.
Right.
And he sat in this room. He sat in, the interview was here in my office, and he sat in that very chair when he said that.
Oh, beautiful.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's the chair where my client, and this is where I do my coaching. I sit over there in the rocking chair. And when he said that, I thought, man, that's peaceful. And you just reminded me of it when you said everybody wants to go home. And I've read that somewhere. That language is, you've used that somewhere when I was researching you. I don't remember where it was, probably on your website.
Right.
It's an interesting metaphor. What is it? So what does it mean? Like it implies that if you want to go home, that means you're not home.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, for me, just talking from my own personal experience, when I referenced existential questions I had, that for me was the original trauma. So feeling like you're losing a sense of connection, feeling like you're losing a sense of home inside of yourself, whether that's through the human incarnation or starting to pop out of mom's womb into a world that's new, whatever that is. So, but there is some point in kind of like a severing of that for most people, a connection to that home feeling where you feel like I'm swimming in this ocean of light and warmth, and then I'm coming into this little boxed in body that has to figure out who he is or who she is. So for me, like coming home just means like you're rediscovering your source, and your source is like that's where everything comes from. It's like you're a lamp without electricity, you're gonna feel like I'm useless. Once you plug yourself back into source, you feel like I'm connected.
That's awesome.
So
You have great metaphors,
like,
man. I love your metaphors. Fun stuff. So
yeah, you have to plug in back into the source, and then you don't feel like there's
yes.
something. You just feel like I'm home, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm rocking, I'm doing what I need to do.
That's beautiful.
That's all that coaching does, right? That's all that psychotherapy is supposed to do. That's all that spirituality is supposed to do. It's like once we kind of like take away the verbiage and the clutter of all those terminologies, it's really all about the same thing. If you really focus on the essential thing is just to get there, right?
Do you think that more
Reconnection.
people, this kind of conversation still is very esoteric for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
And I was joking earlier, but it was only half joking about like Sedona. I think a lot of people, very conscious people, move to Sedona for that reason.
Right.
Right. You want to be around, and you mentioned it, I'm around like-minded people.
Yes.
Carl Jung really made a huge contribution to normalizing spiritual conversation in Western culture.
Yes.
What's your experience with that? Like, if I'm sitting over at the sports bar, there's a bar across the street here where I watch my games and hang out with my friends, and this isn't a conversation I probably have a lot over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad thing. Where are we? But it would be, I think it would be a great thing though. If more of us wanted to have this conversation. Why aren't more of us having these kinds of conversations?
Well, the question that you're asking, I don't think is that important, because it's a kind of like a why question. And a why question is kind of like, I think we have as many people talking about this as we need to, and we're gradually coming to a greater level of awareness, and it's okay if some people still like to roll around in bed and sleep, and some people want to get up and say, I want to kind of live a different life. It's like, it's all good. It's all good. And there's different levels of urgency, right? And the different levels of wanting to come home. And that's I'm good with that. And there's no need for me to be like in this mode of spiritual depth and discussion with everybody. Like I going out in my neighborhood and not just like loving people, and I don't want to talk about this shit. You know what I mean? So I just want to make him feel like the most precious, loved, and amazing person, and I just want to love the ordinariness of things. I don't have to be seen as a spiritual mentor or a guide or anything like that. How you live is the biggest and most important thing, how you show up. And like, the less you talk about it and the more you are that, I think that's much more important. But my job is to also articulate things and to really look into things so I can make it comprehensible for other people. And I'm not here to be another person that lives this lighthearted spirituality and just as a feel-good spirituality. For me, it's important for me to combine the psychology of Jung with a spiritual non-dual awareness. So that bridge hasn't really been made so far in our evolution, because Jung was asked back in the day, like, because he was alive at the same time as Ramana Maharshi was. And I don't know if you know Ramana Maharshi, but he was like an Indian sage who was very, very spiritually enlightened, and was very non-psychological, whereas Jung was very psychological, but not very non-dual. And Jung declined a meeting with Ramana Maharshi because he said that he knows where this guy is coming from, and he doesn't need to talk to him. But you could tell, like,
wow,
those two like mindsets are quite opposite in a way. even though they're not supposed to be. That's why psycho-spiritual, they aren't necessarily one and the same thing. There are overlaps, but they're also separate in a way. But they're both important right now in our human evolution, because one is not going to be sufficient. You have to have a combination of both fields in a way to really make this the bridge possible for humans to cross back and forth from divine to human.
And you're the bridge. You're a bridge.
I'm going to be one of the people who are trying to articulate this in a way that's understandable for most people. My job is not to be like Carl Jung, to make things as complicated, because he was very committed to keeping it as close to mythology as possible and to the scriptures, and like he was like. And his breadth of understanding was just staggering, and nobody comes ever close to that. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like just dumbing it down, so I can understand it and like make it into something more pragmatic.
Yeah.
And so people can run with this and have fun with this, because the more mastery you have over a certain level of reality within yourself, the more simpler you can express it. So my goal is for me to break down whatever it is inside of me that is in need of transforming. So it's almost like I'm doing this alchemy work within myself, so I can find the simplest language to translate that into the human experience. So ideally, a 5-year-old would understand. I could write a children's book about those processes, and a child would say, yeah, I totally get this.
I love that.
I like it too, because the human mind is like the unconscious really speaks. Like you say, I love your metaphors. The human mind and unconscious speaks in a lot of pictures, and that's the way to go. I think people, that's a universal language. It's like a universal language. No matter how old you are, no matter where you come from, people understand that kind of translation. Yeah.
What is that ring on your right hand?
Well, that goes into a completely different area of the human optimization, but that would be like a sleep ring that you wear at night. So
is that the Aura ring?
Yes.
Is that the OURA ring?
Yes.
I did that. I got one of those. Mine's charging right now.
Yeah. No, mine needs charging soon too, but that would fall on the physical layer of human optimization, which I also think is important.
What's on your left index finger?
I cut myself with a knife.
Okay. Speaking of physical optimization.
Yeah, no, I mean, shit happens. I was making Christmas cookies. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I got to tell you, man, it is so obvious that you are one of the homeboys that does his work, man. Listening to you is what a treat for me. I am definitely. I am better right now because of this conversation. You emanate peace. You know that?
Thank you so much.
Like the way you answer my questions, I just like you even like. I love that you said, I think your question is flawed, or it doesn't really matter, or whatever it was, how you said it. It's like, because we're, as many people that need to be having the conversations are, and it's like you're bringing this like, we're good, man, sensation,
good.
which is healing, dude, because that is infinitely contrary to messages that we're all being bombarded with, right, daily, which is you're not enough.
Yeah.
This sucks, right? You should have more. You should be more. People are bad and all that. You bring this soothingness, bro, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolute peace.
Where do you want people to find you, man?
Well, people are welcome to go to my website. That is danielharner.com, and you'll find my phone number and email address there, and I'm happy to have a dialogue that's meaningful. If people want to.
Are you taking new clients at this moment?
I have an opening in January for one client.
So we're recording this. This is going to be evergreen, by the way. We're going to repost this. But right now we are recording this in mid-December of 2020. This will probably go live, this interview, in early February. So I guess we can't predict. But anyway, the website is still there. The website's awesome, by the way. I love the music that you have on your website.
Oh, thank you. That's
It's really
pretty
cool. It's very soothing.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very evocative music. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes. Yes. No, people can find more information about me on the website, but it's not the most updated. So it's that there's the bare minimum is on there. So if people want to have a conversation that goes beyond that, I'm open to communicating and being in dialogue. So
Perfect. Well, I thank you, brother, my new friend, for making time and for sharing your wisdom and insights and for emanating, for being a radiator of peace here with the Tough Talks tribe.
thank you. Yeah, you're a great man, and I so appreciate your presence, and thank you for making this available to me to share myself and what I do and what I'm up to. That's I so enjoyed it.
The world is better because of you, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
That's how I feel after talking to people like that. That was cool. What a phenomenal conversation. I was infinitely sincere right there with that compliment I paid him at the end, which is more just a statement of observation or fact, which hopefully was complimentary as well. Which is I feel peaceful. I feel more peaceful as a consequence of having hung out with him. He really does. You can tell that's a guy. Okay, that's an example of a person who does their damn work, who really is truly committed to their inner work. You can feel it. Of course, you can hear it. You can feel it too. What a sense of serenity that he emanates. He really does remove a lot of pathology. So, from my thinking, spiritual nourishment, and the devil is walking with us, and that's a good thing. That's pretty cool. Yeah, the devil's walking with us, which means, let's see if I can paraphrase what he meant, which is that the devil isn't like the pitchfork guy who's like evil and burning. You're going to burn in hell if you're a bad person. It's the shadow, right, that he described. And we get to. It's not a need to or have to. It's the human experience. Part of the human experience is that we get to grow. We're designed for growth. So the devil is the opportunity for growth. And it's always walking with us, which is really, that's just badass. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And until next time, or thanks for tuning in as always. And please, if you're digging this, please share it with your loved ones, forward these episodes and encourage them to follow us. I'm loving my Tough Talks tribe, and thanks for being a part of it. Until next time, create miracles.